7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
I'm walking home from class one day. Boom! Out of nowhere, a car jumped the curb and hits me, breaking my pelvis. I was terrified and I was in pain. Laying in the hospital bed, I didn't know what to do. I was 1,000 miles from home. I'm a college student. There's no way that I have the money to pay for hospital bills, let alone a lawyer. But then I heard about the advocates. They don't charge you anything, not even a dime, unless they win your case. So I called them up. I'm an out-of-state student, and they still represented me. They were incredible. The advocates helped me every step of the way. The settlement that they got me paid for all of the hospital bills and physical therapy to help me walk again. It also covered the shifts that I missed from work. Even if you're an out-of-state student, these people will help you. Definitely call the advocates. You won't regret it.
I'm Matt with the Advocates Injury Lawyers. College is hard enough without worrying about medical bills. If you're hurt, give us a call. We'll take care of the rest.
In the middle of the night, Saskia awoke in a haze. Her husband Mike was on his laptop. What was on his screen would change Saskia's life forever.
I said, I need you to tell me exactly what you're doing. And immediately, the mask came off.
You're supposed to be safe. That's your home. That's your husband.
Listen to Betrayal Season 5 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This February, fall in love with your checking account. At Granite Credit Union, our Dividend Plus Spend is a checking account that loves you back. Earn dividends on your checking plus an additional bonus on your money market. Enjoy modern features, digital tools, and benefits that make your everyday banking feel effortless. Visit granite.org or call 801-288-3000. Granite Credit Union, always there so you can make life happen. Membership eligibility required. Minimum balance requirements apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
Now here's a highlight from Coast to Coast AM on iHeartRadio.
And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Good to be with you on a Friday night. Robert Zimmerman back with us. Historian Robert Zimmerman has been chronicling and putting the history of space exploration for almost 4 decades with books, articles, and web pages. His website is behindtheblack.com. He is an expert in stories of astronauts and world events, and here he is back on Coast to Coast. Mr. Zimmerman, how are you?
I'm just fine, George. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. And the timing is right. We're just before that Artemis 2 mission. Kind of exciting in some ways, and exciting and not so good in other ways.
Yes, this delay because of weather. I guess they're wising up and realizing you can't keep pushing things, but it'll get going, huh?
The delay on the... All right, so let me review what the mission's about, just so for the audience. I'm sure they know, but just it's good to do a quick review. This mission is going to be the first manned mission in the Artemis program. It's going to be using the SLS rocket that NASA's been building for about 2 decades, about a decade and a half, and it's cost us about $60 million. This is only its second launch. And it's going to be using the Orion capsule, which Lockheed Martin has been building for about 2 decades. Cost about $25 million to build about a half a dozen capsules. And they're going to put 4 astronauts on this mission, and it's going to take a very wide slingshot orbit that will take it around the moon, not into orbit, and then come back to Earth. The overall mission is going to be about 10 days. That's the plan. So they're going to do what they call a wet dress rehearsal. They're going to do it on Saturday, tomorrow, but they're not going to do that because the weather, it was very cold and there's winds. This is pretty standard. It's not a big surprise. They got a big rocket. They want to be safe. So they're going to do this, the wet dress rehearsal. And what they do is they simulate a full countdown up until 10 seconds before launch. They fuel the rocket. They do everything as if they can actually do a launch. And they're also going to do some make-believe holes, like something's wrong, and then cycle the count back again as if they had to do that. So the practice, and this is a good thing to do. They're going to do it on Friday. That's not where the danger is, George. This comes down to the NASA, once again, like in Challenger and in like Columbia, putting schedule above engineering. With Challenger, they wanted to prove the shuttle could launch regularly like an airplane. And so they were going to launch no matter what, even though engineers told them the cold weather in January was going to make those O-rings and solid rocket boosters freeze and not work. And they said, no, we got to shoot. We got to schedule. We got to launch. So they launched, and 7 people died. With Columbia, for years, and this is literally true, for years they had evidence that foam was coming off the external tank and hitting the tiles and damaging them. For years, NASA had that information, but they just dismissed it and said, no, we got to schedule, we got to keep flying. And so once again, a whole Columbia was hit by foam. Its thermal protection system was damaged, and it broke up upon re-entry. So here we have Artemis 2 going to launch, and it's going to launch now because Donald Trump wants to have a lunar land, and not just Donald Trump, Ted Cruz and a lot of senators want to have a manned lunar landing before the Chinese. Now, I should point out that we don't have to beat the Chinese to the moon. In case anyone hasn't noticed, we did it already.
That's right.
Chinese
A lot of times.
Say again?
A lot of times we beat them.
That's right. We've been there already 6 times. So we don't have to beat them to prove we could do it. But they want to beat them. And so they want to have this mission go around the moon so that the next Artemis mission can land on the moon by 28. I will tell you the 28 date is a fantasy, but let's put that aside for a minute. Let's talk about Artemis 2. The Orion capsule they're using with Artemis 2, when they launched it on an unmanned test flight around the moon back in 22, it came back through the atmosphere, and when they recovered it in the ocean, they were shocked to find that the heat shield had not functioned as expected. It didn't just ablate off as it's supposed to, very gently, layer upon layer. That's how these heat shields always work. As they take the heat away by ablating the layers off. No, what happened is large chunks broke off. Never happened before. NASA spent 2 years analyzing this. They think, important word, they think they have figured out why it happened. This particular heat shield on Orion is much larger than they've ever used before. It's got seams, and they thought coming through the atmosphere, gas got into those seams and acted almost like a chisel, pulling the chunks out. All right, so you're dealing with a heat shield that's questionable. NASA has made the decision not to change the heat shield. They're going to change the heat shield on the next Orion mission, the next Artemis mission, but they didn't have time to put it on this particular capsule. And so instead, they're going to launch it with this capsule with a heat shield that is questionable, with a problem they're not entirely sure they understand, though some think they do. And they've decided that the way to solve the problem is they change the trajectory of the capsule as it comes into the atmosphere to reduce the stress on the heat shield.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
For people who believe food is part of family values, Azure Standard stands out. Azure Standard focuses on organic groceries and home products, transparent sourcing, and relationships that matter. It is a brand built for households that care deeply about what they bring into their home. If quality and trust matter to you, Azure Standard is worth knowing. Visit AzureStandard.com and experience a more purposeful approach to feeding your family. That's AZURE Standard.com.
Premier Protein, it's for getting after life, not just fitness, because life isn't lived only in the gym, it's lived in the moments that matter most. That's where Premier Protein shakes come in. With 30 grams of protein, just 160 calories, and no sugar added. They're made to help people fuel their joyful lives. We all know the feeling. When life gets really busy, taking care of yourself can feel impossible. But with Premier Protein, you can say yes to more. Yes to crushing that big presentation at work. Yes to building an epic fort with the kids. Yes to hitting the hiking trail with friends and still having energy left to laugh at the top. And with a wide variety of flavors, from cafe latte to cake batter, from chocolate to cookies and cream, it never feels boring. Premier Protein makes it easy to keep going strong, no matter what your day looks like. Find your favorite flavor at premierprotein.com or pick them up at Amazon, Walmart, and other major retailers. Premier Protein. Fuel your life and say yes to more.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love. Now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Is Artemis a NASA spacecraft or a
Yes, this is all NASA. These are all NASA. This is not private enterprise. No Lockheed Martin make the capsule. This is a NASA design, NASA project. This is all NASA. This is not private enterprise. And so they're doing that. That's one. Now I will point out that if SpaceX wanted to put people on a Dragon capsule with this kind of heat shield problem, I guarantee to you that NASA would say, no way, Jose. You do an unmanned mission testing first before you do so. NASA's not doing that because schedule. They got to get this up so they can launch the manned mission by 28. Once again, that schedule's a fantasy. We'll get to that later. But that's one issue. That's one. It's not the only one. This particular Orion capsule will be the first capsule to have a life support system on it. The Orion capsule life support system was not tested in 22. There were no people on the capsule. They didn't need it, but they should have tested it. So instead, they're going to put 4 people on a capsule with an untested life support system in space. And they're going to try using as guinea pigs to test this life support system. NASA has planned to keep the capsule in Earth orbit for about a day, at a high Earth orbit, but for about a day to test the life support system out. So if there are any issues, they can come back to Earth safely.
You don't sound too confident,
the Apollo era. They flew a 10-day mission in Earth orbit to test the Apollo systems with humans on board for 10 days to duplicate a lunar mission to make sure everything would work for the length of time needed to go to and from the moon. They're not doing that here. So that's a second issue. And once again, if any private company wanted to put astronauts in a capsule for NASA with an untested life support system, I guarantee you NASA would say no. But once again, they got to meet the schedule, and so they're going to launch. That's what they're going to do. This is a very foolish situation. Now, I will point out, to be fair to NASA, they tested the heat shield on the ground extensively. They even tested it in the worst possible circumstance. They tested it to see what happens if the heat shield completely fails and the hull of the Orion capsule gets exposed to the heat of reentry. And they came away from those tests reassured. It appeared to them that the hull would survive that circumstance. So they're reassured, and that is reassuring. But I repeat, they do not know if this changed trajectory will really work. Modeling says so, but as we all know with modeling, that can be wrong. And in good engineering rocketry, you don't test with people until you've tested it unmanned. And this is the problem with NASA. It's the same problem with Challenger and with Columbia. They should not be flying this mission manned. Now, I had an op-ed on Pajamas Media about 3 weeks ago where I begged, that was my headline, I begged Trump and Jared Isaacman, the head of NASA, to take the people off this mission. And I outlined, if they did this as an unmanned mission, it really would not delay this whole program significantly. It wouldn't delay it enough to not need the Chinese to the moon, because I'm sure the Chinese are not going to land on the moon with people before 2030, based on everything I've seen of their program. And the White House knows this. They have enough information to know this. So there's time to spare. And this gets back to, once again, that 28 date, getting men, humans on the moon by 28. That's not a real number anyway. They're not going to do it by 28 because they got too many things they've got to get built first. First of all, the starship that they want to use as the lander is very unlikely to be ready by that time. It might be operational enough for unmanned missions. When NASA wants SpaceX to do an unmanned test mission to the moon, it's not going to get this done by 28, almost certainly. So they have time, and there's no reason to push this. But gung-ho, go fever, and here we go again. I am praying the mission works, nothing goes wrong. I think the odds are reasonably good that will happen. But if nothing bad happens, this is just going to continue NASA with the bad culture it's had for 40 years. George, this gets back to your question. The reason it's a NASA government rocket, it's a NASA government capsule, it's a NASA government program, and these are always filled with these kind of poor management decisions for political reasons. Private enterprise generally doesn't do this. They have too many risks. They don't get their money from tax dollars. They get it from customers who have faith in them.
Listen to more Coast to Coast AM every weeknight at 1 a.m. Eastern. And go to coasttocoastam.com for more.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human. This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human. Friday, with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold. Sensational. The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Redefining the sport. Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
That's another amazing run by Team USA. And you too can go for glory with the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee.
Now through February 22nd, get gig Wi-Fi for $50 a month for 5 years. Guaranteed. Plus, get Peacock Premium included for 2 years. That's a $10.99 value per month. Xfinity. Imagine that. Proud partner of Team USA. Restrictions apply. Requires paperless billing and auto pay with stored bank account. Taxes and fees extra. Actual speeds vary.
This is Jacob Goldstein from What's Your Problem? When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
It is I, George Washington. Let me tell you about a President's Day sale from Big O Tires. No, listen to me. I got this. It's really no big deal.
I'll make the declaration. I'm on the $100 bill.
You're not even a president, man.
Now through February 22nd, buy 3, get 1 free of 4 select in-stock Big O branded tires with installation purchase.
Big O Tires, the team you trust.
Installation required. Disposal fees and shopping sites to order. See store for pricing. Don't you know that they're not going with other offers?
Now here's a highlight from Coast to Coast AM on iHeartRadio.
I wanted to get a couple of these emails. One person emailed and said they believe Mothman is an omen that appears when death is near. Any indication that sometimes unrelated things are happening behind the scenes of a sighting? Maybe when you're talking about this, there's certain tidbits that come out that you recognize as patterns.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would love to say, Ryan, is that when it comes to Mothman or any kind of subject like this, there are no real experts, right? So my opinion is just an opinion, and it doesn't invalidate that of any of your listeners that are checking out the show. So that being said, one of the big things I wanted to challenge with the book, and my co-author did too, is the idea that Mothman is a harbinger of doom and disaster. And a lot of that comes down to the link with the Silver Bridge collapse, which happened in Point Pleasant, claimed, I believe it was 44 or 45 lives, and was an absolute disaster that changed the way we inspect and construct bridges in the United States ever since. It was tragic, but the Mothman sightings had actually ended before the bridge collapse. However, if you saw the movie, And if you read the books, Mothman Prophecies and the Silver Bridge by Gray Barker, they kind of tied the idea in that Mothman was turning up as either a warning, or in some cases, some people interpret it as Mothman is to blame for that disaster. So I did. When I went to Point Pleasant, the first thing I wanted to do was pay respects to the victims of that tragedy, and the town has done a beautiful job in memorializing them, and investigate this a little further. In the town told me that prior to the release of those books, nobody in Point Pleasant tied the Mothman sightings in with the bridge collapse. Nobody linked them, and what I say, if it's controversial, then so be it. But I believe that if you remove the Silver Bridge narrative, that you really don't have an ending to the story as told in those books. And if you see the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, Richard Gere, Laura Linney, it's a great movie. However, the big action scene in that movie is the bridge collapse scene. You know, it's a very Hollywood thing, I hate to say it. In reality, there's no evidence to suggest that the Mothman sightings have anything to do with that particular disaster. What's fascinating is there were Mothman sightings connected with, number one, the Fukushima power station meltdown post-tsunami in Japan, and also the Chernobyl, or Black Bird of Chernobyl, which was believed to be a Mothman sighting as well. Here's the thing, though, it's a great story, right? But when you dig into the Black Bird of Chernobyl, you realize that every single mention of that post-dates the movie release of the Mothman Prophecies.
Let's something else you bring up there. So maybe it's not a giant event around some of the different sightings, but like we'll use Bigfoot for example, because you said that's something you're researching at the moment. And I'm also a friend in Australia who talks about the Yowie, the Bigfoot stories in Australia. Yeah. And some of the background stories is that when Bigfoot's around, the birds go quiet. So are there any other of those type of things that stand out to you when it comes to Mothman sightings? Something like, well, you mentioned the feel of fear, like it predates the moment of the sighting, the fear that people get. Are there any natural things like birds going quiet when a Mothman's around?
Not that I'm aware of, although that isn't to say that there aren't any, but there are none that I identified as part of my research. Stepping into the unnatural realm, though, there is definitely a correlation between some of the Mothman sightings and UFO sightings. One of the busiest airports in the world, Chicago O'Hare, the airport and its environs have Mothman sightings. And also one of the most infamous 21st century UFO sightings took place at O'Hare as well. Before the Mothman sightings took place in West Virginia and Point Pleasant, you had this rash of lights in the sky, and during the sightings too, people were seeing these weird disc shapes. They were seeing these floating UFOs in the skies over Point Pleasant and the TNT area before and at the same time as the Mothman sightings. So it's definitely an unnatural link, I think, with the UFO phenomenon.
What would you say the most recent sighting is? Did we have sightings like last year, for example?
Of Mothman?
Of Mothman?
Yeah, there have been a bunch in Mexico, and they do still continue to come in. So researchers like Tobias Wayland and Lon Strickler are being very diligent about cataloging them. Again, I'm wary about putting the label specifically Mothman on it. I much prefer flying humanoid sightings, or winged humanoid sightings. Those come in annually, repeatedly, multiple times from across the US and elsewhere.
Okay.
In fact,
does AI...
apologize. When you open the lines, Coast to Coast listeners are night owls. I'm willing to bet at least one of them will have one that calls in.
I hope so. I hope there's someone listening right now. And I think one of the things that you mentioned before is very important, where they're afraid to tell the story because the company that they're in may not find it acceptable, or they might find it a little bit too wacky. So out of the fear of them being taken as not credible or crazy, they decide to keep it to themselves. That's a whole different thing when we're talking about Coast to Coast AM. There's a lot of people listening here right now that would love to hear your story if you saw something like that. So we are going to take calls next hour. I'm hoping we can get a few. But going back to the whole AI thing, is it difficult to look at social media when you're researching this sort of thing, when you're flooded with fake AI videos that people are creating?
It is an absolute nightmare, and that is true of being a paranormal investigator or journalist or writer in any aspect, whether it's ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, or whatever. When I began in the mid-90s, and I don't want to wax too nostalgic here, Ryan, but somebody had a ghost photograph for me. I thought that was great because I had a negative I could examine, and then I could send that negative to the Kodak Labs or to a photographic analyst who would look at it and say, you know, this has been tampered with, it's a double exposure, there's a fault in the film, or, you know, what I ideally wanted to hear was, yeah, I've got no idea what was photographed here, but nobody has messed with this. Well, we now live in the age not just of Photoshop, but $3 apps that will insert ghosts, cryptids, and UFOs into your photographs so that you can scare and amaze your friends, right? And people have been having a great time whenever there are disasters of inserting Mothman in. People have done it, I think, in horrifically bad taste with 9/11. People have done it with ships hitting bridges. You know, these are cases in which people lose their lives, and they're pushing this narrative of Mothman as a harbinger of doom or a creature of evil. And a simple Google reverse image search will dispel a lot of these myths right away. They'll show you the base photograph before it was altered. But yeah, it just muddies the waters. And whenever somebody cries wolf, if they have a genuine sighting, nobody's going to believe it.
Friday, kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold. Opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Redefining the sport. Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt, from renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year. You can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC. SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Pro drivers live for race day, but for small business owners, every day is race day. That's why going pro with Lenovo Pro matters. One-on-one advice, IT solutions, and customized hardware powered by Intel Core Ultra processors keep your business on the right track. Business goes pro with Lenovo Pro. Sign up for free at lenovo.com/pro.
You ever wonder how far an EV can take you on one charge? Well, most people drive about 40 miles a day, which means you can do all daily stuff no problem. Go to work, grab the kids at school, get the groceries, and still have enough charge to visit your in-laws in the next county. But they don't need to know that. And the best part, you won't have to buy gas at all. The way forward is electric. Explore EVs that fit your life at electricforall.org.
Have you visited Skinwalker Ranch?
I was very fortunate to go to Skinwalker Ranch. I was going to say last year, but it's the year before now. When I was speaking at Phenomicon in Utah, and I got as far as the gate, escorted with permission by the staff from Skinwalker Ranch. Heard some great stories there. And this was actually right before one of my Mothman trips. And what was interesting was that I got on a plane and headed to Point Pleasant to West Virginia right afterwards, and midway between Chicago and West Virginia, the plane sprung a broken seal. Air started hissing out of the pressurized cabin. Pilot had to do an emergency descent and turn us back to Chicago. And I've heard so many stories about things happening to people after Skinwalker Ranch. They call it this hitchhiker phenomenon, which I know has been very well covered on Coast to Coast in the past. I could not help but wonder if there was a connection between my visit to that strange place and what happened on that plane.
Always Chicago, it seems like. That Chicago comes up a lot when even this conversation here tonight. And I don't know what it is about Lake Michigan or the Great Lakes or that region, but there's a lot of things. Like, for example, I'm here in Michigan now. I live in the Detroit area. And last year, one of the big exciting things from the DNR is that they had a cougar cub sighting. And it was the first time in decades that anyone's seen a cougar cub that was in the Upper Peninsula, so up there in Michigan, Wisconsin border, that area. And I think about things like that because I know they're out there. We don't see them. We know they exist. I feel the same way about things like Bigfoot or Mothman. We know that something is happening if we've got a photograph of it or not. And sometimes it just takes a long time before you find the evidence.
You are right on the money about Chicago and also Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. I have a couple of friends that are UPAs. They run the UPA's Paranormal Research Society. In fact, Brad Blair, Tim Ellison, you should have them on the show sometime. But something about these guys are paranormal investigators that can't just do ghosts. They have to do UFOs. They have to do lake monsters. They have to do all of this stuff because the Upper Peninsula in Michigan is so active. But yeah, around the Great Lakes, you name it, there are sightings of it. You know, I would say there are probably more sightings per capita in that part of the country than most others.
Did you mention Canada? Are there sightings there too?
Canada has sightings north of the border. Mexico has sightings south of the border. Yeah, it's hard to find places where there aren't winged humanoid sightings to some degree. Now, as you get to other continents, they are perhaps less well documented, but they certainly do have them. And again, hesitate to use the word Mothman, but there are enough similarities. Humanoid beings, winged, seen flying through the air.
Right. And it's more of an encompassing type of terminology that people understand. And though you may try to narrow it down into something that's more accurate of a description, it's kind of that umbrella description that people can get behind, right? And it makes it a little bit easier to describe it when you're just saying Mothman, even though it might be technically a little bit different.
Absolutely, and the reason I make that distinction is simply because Mothman is a kind of 1966, you know, that's where the term originates. But then you go back to another case we investigated for the book, the Van Meter Visitor, which took place in Iowa in 1903. You have this small town in rural Iowa, not that far from Des Moines now, but it was pretty rural back then. And this is one of those towns where one day this winged creature, like a pterodactyl kind of, comes into town, starts shooting a laser beam from the horn on top of its head into various buildings. The entire town does exactly what you would expect them to do. They are extremely heavily armed. They all take pot shots at this thing. And it's either bulletproof or nobody hits it. I lean more towards the former explanation than the latter, I think. And for several nights, this thing holds a reign of terror over the entire town. And to this day, Van Meter has it annually. It's Van Meter Visitor Festival, where people come in and they talk about the story. There is a mine shaft which is boarded up and covered with earth, in which the creature is supposed to still be either hibernating or something, or lurking in some way. But again, you've got, if it's not Mothman, it's Mothman adjacent, you know, and this predates the Mothman sightings by 6 decades.
Right. Yeah, it's in 1903. So you're investigating it for the next thing, Bigfoot, and I know there's a lot of universal sightings for that as well, much like Mothman. Do you think there are, what's, I guess, the stronger evidence? If you just, I know you're still working on Bigfoot, but do you think there's stronger evidence, one or the other, or do you think it's about equal when it comes to things like Mothman and Bigfoot?
Oh, I see. I think Bigfoot, again, if you're willing to look at, you know, you mentioned the Yowie. which I think is I'm glad you brought that up. I've been writing about the Yowie for a upcoming book. In fact, the characteristics are so similar to Bigfoot, right? You want to talk about remote areas. It's hard to touch the Australian outback in terms of sheer square footage, and you get all of these sightings coming from that part of the world. I think it's absolutely conceivable that there is something walking around out there that we as a species have not yet been able to pigeonhole, to pin down and prove that it exists. It's getting a little bit harder in North America, but I've also started seeing many Bigfoot sightings that take place closer to population centers. In fact, when I was out in Deadwood, in the vicinity of Deadwood a while back, in Sturgis, the biggest motorcycle rally on the continent in Sturgis, and they have Bigfoot sightings in the area. Here in Colorado and the Rockies, we have them up in Bailey. In fact, there's a Sasquatch outpost up here that the sightings are so common that there is a Sasquatch museum, and those kind of museums are popping up in multiple states. So I think probably the physical evidence is more compelling for Bigfoot as opposed to Mothman. My fellow author Tobias made a great point. He said, we may have the occasional footprint of Mothman as we encountered in our book research, but nobody talks about Mothman poop. You're not finding that kind of biological matter. And I know it's funny by the same token, physical traces, right? But there are plenty of signs of Bigfoot interacting with the environment, whether it is bending, tree limbs and tree trunks themselves into these weird structures and shapes, whether it is hair, elements of carcasses, things of that nature. There's more stuff to actually be examined when it comes to Bigfoot than there ever was for Mothman.
Listen to more Coast to Coast AM every weeknight at 1 a.m. Eastern. And go to coasttocoastam.com for more.
Enjoy more ways to save at Smith's, like low prices in every aisle. And you can clip and save more with digital coupons in the Smith's app. Plus, you can earn fuel points to save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. So it's always easy to save big. Smith's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Fuel restrictions apply. See site for details.
Save even more on your favorites. Simply mix and match 5 or more participating items and get them for just 99 cents each during our 99-cent sale going on now. Here brings new wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. Your info is in endless places that could expose you to identity theft, leading to lost funds. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Resolve to make identity, health, and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
It is I, George Washington. Let me tell you about a President's Day sale from Big O Tires. No, listen to me. I'm the honest one. I got this. It's really no big deal.
I'll make the declaration. I'm on the $100 bill.
You're not even a president.
Now through February 22nd, buy 3, get 1 free of 4 select in-stock Big O branded tires with installation purchase.
Big O Tires, the team you trust.
Installation required. Disposal fees and shop fees extra or limited. See store for pricing. Eligibility may vary. Not relevant with other offers.
There's no championship league for small business owners, but if there was, you'd be at the top of the standings. Because going pro with Lenovo Pro means you've got the winning formation. One-on-one advice, IT solutions, and customized hardware powered by Intel Core Ultra processors help you stay ahead of the competition. Business goes pro with Lenovo Pro. Sign up for free at lenovo.com/pro.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.